How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Jay, and after my last video about I-bonds and how they're paying over a 7% interest rate, I received a lot of comments and questions from people asking if they should, or telling me that they are, putting their entire emergency fund into I-bonds. So I thought in this video I would compare I-bonds versus a high-yield savings account in terms of where you should keep your money for your emergency fund. We'll look at the pros and cons of keeping your money in I-bonds versus a high-yield savings account and vice versa. And I'll give my strategy for incorporating I-bonds as part of your emergency fund. So if that's something that you're into, don't forget to hit the like button down below, and let's get started. First up, let's look at the advantages that I-bonds have over a high-yield savings account and the advantages that a high-yield savings account has over I-bonds. And we'll start with the high-yield savings account and what the advantages of that are over keeping your money totally in I-bonds. First and foremost, the number one advantage a high-yield savings account will have over I-bonds is your money is 100% liquid and always 100% easily accessible. I-bonds, if you recall, you cannot access any of your money for the first 12 months after buying them. So your money is totally locked up for the entire first year, and after that you'll have to pay an interest penalty if you withdraw that money before holding the I-bonds for 5 years. The second advantage a high-yield savings account will have over I-bonds is there's no limit on how much money you can put in your high-yield savings account. With I-bonds, remember, you can only buy $10,000 worth of I-bonds in any given year. That goes up to $15,000 if you want to use your tax refund to buy more. But for all intents and purposes, you're still capped at 10 or 15K in I-bonds. High-yield savings account, I can put $50, $100, $150,000 in there if I want and can. The third advantage a high-yield savings account will have over I-bonds is there's no penalties. If I need to withdraw or use the money in my high-yield savings account, I can do so whenever I want, however I want, without having to worry about being charged a penalty. That's not the case with I-bonds, as we just discussed, if you need that money in the first year or before 5 years. And of course, there are advantages to I-bonds over high-yield savings accounts as well, or else we wouldn't be having this debate. The main advantage an I-bond will have over a high-yield savings account is going to be the interest rate. Right now, I-bonds are paying over 7% interest, and as we discussed in the video about I-bonds specifically, that rate will adjust up or down with inflation every 6 months. Regardless, you can count on I-bonds to pay a much higher interest rate than your high-yield savings account. High-yield savings accounts right now are paying maybe 0.25%, which is a long way away from 7% in I-bonds. Another really important advantage an I-bond will have over a high-yield savings account is your tax on that interest is deferred. Any interest you're earning on your savings in a high-yield savings account, you're gonna have to declare on your tax return each and every year. With I-bonds, number one, any interest you earn is exempt from any state taxes. And number two, you don't have to pay any taxes on that interest until you actually sell or redeem the bond. So depending on how much money you have in one place or the other, that tax advantage could be very significant. Now let's get back to your emergency fund. In my opinion, the number one feature you need for your emergency fund is liquidity. The whole point of a quote-unquote emergency fund is to have money easily available in the event of an unexpected expense. You never know when your car will break down or when your pet goldfish will need emergency flipper replacement surgery. And when those things happen, you want to be able to pay for them quickly and easily. But that's not to say it's case closed and we shouldn't or can't use I-bonds as part of our emergency fund strategy. We can utilize both I-bonds and a high-yield savings account for our emergency fund. And here's the strategy I would use to make that happen. And it's gonna take two main things to make this happen. Number one, you're gonna need more cash in savings than you really need to be having on hand for your emergency fund right now. And number two, you're gonna need a little patience. Now, as we know, our money is locked up in I-bonds for the first 12 months after we purchase them. But after that, we're able to access our money just by paying 3 months worth of an interest penalty, which in reality will probably still give us a better ROI than leaving our money in a high-yield savings account. So what we can do to implement I-bonds as part of our emergency fund strategy is slowly transition over from the high-yield savings account into I-bonds. Let's say, for an example, I've calculated I need $10,000 on hand for my emergency fund. But right now I'm currently sitting on $12,000 in savings. what I can do is take that quote unquote extra $2,000, take it from my high yield savings account and move it into some I bonds. Now, for the first 12 months after doing that, I won't have access to that $2,000 at all, but I still have my ideal $10,000 amount in my high yield savings account in case the world comes crashing down on me. Once that first year is up, that $2,000 is just as liquid as the money in my high yield savings account, minus that interest rate penalty we talked about before. And at that point, I can start to consider that $2,000 in I bonds as part of my emergency fund. So now I have $10,000 in high yield savings, I've got $2,000 in I bonds, which means I have $12,000 in liquid cash. Once again, I can take another $2,000 out of my high yield savings account, throw it into I bonds. I still have my $10,000 I determine I need liquid between the I bonds and the high yield savings account. It's just that now the combined interest rate I'm earning is much higher than before. Then after that second year, you have $8,000 in your high yield savings account, you've got $4,000 in I bonds, and you can continue to repeat that process as many times as you like until you're satisfied with your overall mix between high yield savings account and I bonds. So you can see you will need some patience to wait out that 12-month lockup period, but afterwards it is entirely possible to use I bonds as part of your emergency fund. Personally, I don't think I'd ever completely abandon the high yield savings account, but if you're not satisfied with your emergency fund earning 0.25% interest, that's a strategy I would use to move some of it into I bonds. So if you found that useful, please hit that like button down below. It really helps the video and channel out. Let me know what you're doing to incorporate I bonds into your emergency fund. Check out these videos over here if you haven't watched them yet. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you in the next one.